Okay. All right, I think we'll get going. So Jeff, did you want to promote, like, should we promote folks to panelists and open it up, or let me
When it comes
see.
time to ask questions, if people want to ask their questions on camera, we
Okay.
can allow that. Yeah.
Okay. Actually, we're up to, let's see. Okay. All right. I'm going to get going. Hi, everyone. My name is Alice, and I assist Councillor Leap here with the planning and development files for the ward. Thanks for taking the time tonight to attend this open house regarding the proposed amendments to the official plan and the zoning bylaw to permit a 25-story high-rise mixed-use building with 392 residential units, 30 visitor and 113 resident parking spaces, 200 bicycle parking spaces, and 500 square meters of parkland. Before I hand things off to the applicant and their team to provide further details tonight, I'm going to quickly just go over some housekeeping items. Number one, in terms of the format, as noted, the applicant team is present, and in a moment, I'm going to hand things off to them, and they will provide a presentation on the proposal. After the presentation, we're going to open things up to residents, so you can ask questions. And as of now, we're going to use the Q&A function, but we'll see if we can open it up and have people raise hands. So assuming we're going with the Q&A function right now, I've asked that people type in their questions, and I'll be reading them aloud based on those we received there. And number two, as is the practice with all our virtual open houses, this meeting will be recorded and posted on the Kitchissippi Ward YouTube channel by the end of the week. Anyone interested can write our office for a link, or you can search Kitchissippi Ward on YouTube to find it directly. And of course, if you aren't comfortable being recorded on video, please feel free to turn it off on the bottom left-hand side of your screen. With that, I'm going to hand things over to Paul Black from FOTEN and the applicant team for their presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Alice, and thanks everyone for being here tonight. As Alice mentioned, my name is Paul Black. I'm a principal at FOTEN Planning and Design, and working with KTS, who's the property owner here at 116 Beech Street on this proposed redevelopment. I'm joined tonight by Tanya Chowry from KTS Properties, who's the owner, as I mentioned. Ryan Kuhlwein from Project One Studio, who's our project architect, and Andrew Hart from CGH Transportation, who's our transportation consultant. So we're here to just give you an overview of the project. Hopefully you've had a chance to maybe look at some of the documentation that's available on DevApps. But if not, we're going to give you a summary of the development and of what's proposed, a little bit of the planning rationale background, and then we're happy to answer questions that you might have resulting from that. So without any further ado, I'm just going to share my screen. So you should be able to see that now.
Yep.
Perfect. All right. So the property that we're talking about tonight is 116 Beech Street. It's the full block. It's a square property at the end of Loretta and Champaign Avenue, abutting the south side of Beech Street, just west of Ev Tremblay Park, just west of D'Arienzo's, and a little bit west of the LRT corridor and multi-use pathway, and obviously Preston Street, the main street in the neighborhood. So the property, as I mentioned, is quite square, and is currently occupied by a 2 to 2.5 story apartment building with surface parking on the east side along Champaign Avenue. Here's an aerial view of the site, just to give you a bit more context. In this case, south is to the top of the image, north is to the bottom. So we're looking towards sort of the new Civic Hospital and the Carling transit station. You can see the recent developments along Champaign and the older high-rise along Loretta, which are just located south. And obviously you can see Ev Tremblay Park as well. So in terms of the planning context for this application, I'm going to run you through that and a little bit of the rationale, and then Ryan's going to take you through the actual design of the project, and then we can open it up for questions. So in terms of planning context, this site is located in the downtown core transect, which extends as far west really as Preston and these transit station areas. It is designated as hub in the official plan with an evolving overlay, which is that sort of confetti over the map. Um, the hub designation within that downtown core transect, it permits high-rise buildings, so that's up to 40 stories in the city's official plan within a 300-meter radius or 400-meter walking distance. And it requires a minimum building height of 4 stories for any redevelopment. So this site is about 270 meters from the nearest transit station. And so it does meet that criteria for high rise. But that's not a blanket permission. That it requires that we meet the urban design objectives of the official plan as well, which speak to transition into the neighborhood. I'll circle back to that in just a moment. So an additional layer of policy in this area is the West Downtown Core Secondary Plan. So previously this was a more localized secondary plan, but as part of the official plan update in 2022, several plans were merged into one document called the West Downtown Core Secondary Plan. And that 2022 update, it didn't really update any of the policies of those secondary plans. It changed some language to make sure that, references were correct to hub and that sort of thing, but there was no real hard look at the different plans to ensure that they aligned or conformed to the parent official plan. So in this case, the site, you see it on the map here. This is an excerpt of the height schedule from that secondary plan, but it is within what's called the Dow's Lake Station District and within the hub area. And the current permissions would allow heights up to 6 stories. And so this brings us to the first application that's been submitted to the city, which is an official plan amendment to amend the secondary plan. So it's not seeking to amend the parent official plan. It's rationalized, or the amendment to the secondary plan rather is rationalized by the policies of the parent official plan, which, as I mentioned, permit the greater heights. But as I also mentioned, key policies of the official plan are to maintain transition to the low-rise neighborhoods, in this case to the west and to the north. And you can see that blue dashed line that runs along Loretta and Beech. That's the neighborhood line in the secondary plan. And that's really intended to ensure that there is a proper transition from the neighborhood to this hub area, recognizing that it's going to be a denser, more developed area. So in designing the sites, we've taken great care in assuring that there is what we deem appropriate transition to the neighborhood. So stepping the tower back, lower rise elements along the street, and Ryan will walk you through that in just a few minutes to achieve transition. The official plan speaks to achieving transition through a number of ways. So it could be building setbacks or stepbacks, angular planes, that sort of thing. And so we've employed all of those in this case to ensure that there is an appropriate transition to the neighborhoods, both to the north and to the west. In terms of the zoning bylaw, we submitted in December, so technically we're under the old zoning bylaw, which is 2008-250. Some of you are probably aware the city council just adopted the new official plan earlier this month. The new zoning bylaw earlier this month, and it is now in its appeal period, so it will be coming into force at some point over the next months. But in the old zoning bylaw, the property is zoned R5B with a height maximum of 18 meters. That's what that R5B H18 stands for. And so this brings us to the second application, which is a zoning bylaw amendment that's seeking to permit the greater building height, which is 25 stories in this case, with and ensuring those stepbacks for the transition through the zoning, and through a site-specific schedule that would dictate where height is permitted and what heights are permitted where. So amendments that are proposed include height is the main one, but also rear yard setback, which is along the south property line adjacent to 90 Champagne and 285 Loretta. And also adding permissions to permit retail use, which Ryan will speak to, but there's a small area allocated for some retail use to activate the park space. In the new zoning bylaw, the zoning would still require an amendment and would still be amended through the zoning bylaw amendment, but the new zone has it as a Hub 2 zone, which is H2, with a maximum height of 20 meters. So just again, recognizing 6 stories in the secondary plan, it was zoned for 20 meters. You can see the neighborhood to the north and west is zoned N4B, which is N4 is sort of a mid-density neighborhood, with the B subzone, which is higher lot coverage, smaller setbacks. Trends on that side. It goes A to E, but E being the least dense and A being the most. So in terms of key statistics, Alice mentioned some of these, and we're happy to revisit these as we go tonight. But overall, 392 units are proposed. This includes 5% large dwelling units, which the new zoning bylaw has defined as 3-bedroom or 2-bedroom plus den units that are 80 square meters or more. And so that there are 5% of the units within the building that do meet that 80 square meter criteria. And then the building height is to 25 stories or a height of 75 meters. You can see here, and again, Ryan will walk you through this, but there's obviously not the entire site is not 78 meters, but the tower and the greatest heights are 78 meters. 113 resident parking spaces are proposed with 30 visitor parking, which does conform to the bylaw. And 204 bike parking spaces are proposed, so about just over 0.5 per unit in this case. And then there is a square you can see in the top right-hand corner. That's a public parkland dedication. Ryan will speak to that a little bit more as well, but it does represent 10% of the site area. It's been located in that corner to play off of Ev Tremblay Park and offer potential opportunities to animate the space with activities that might be happening in one park or the other. So that represents 498 square meters. So that land is proposed to be dedicated to the city and become public ownership through it would be through a future site plan control application. And so just to recap, in terms of the applications submitted, we've submitted an official plan amendment to amend the secondary plan to permit the proposed site, and a zoning bylaw amendment to again amend the site-specific zoning for this property to permit the proposed development. A future application would be a site plan control application, where we would deal with all the site-specific details in terms of parking layouts in greater detail. I mean, we've already laid them out, but in more specific detail, how garbage is collected, what the landscaping on the site looks like, very specifically in terms of pavers and how much soil and all of that stuff is dealt with at site plan control. So that will be a future process that we'll have to work through if the official plan and zoning bylaw amendment are approved. With that, I'll leave it there, and I'll pass it over to Ryan, who will walk through the design of the project. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Paul. Shoot. All right. You can see my screen? Great. So as Paul was mentioning, we'll go through the design of the project. Sorry, just getting some Zoom stuff out of the way here. This is we approach every one of these projects in a very unique way. We don't like cookie cutters. We like all of our projects to be specific to the site that's being developed. And so we look for the existing character, the existing context, and some projects don't have very much. And in this case, we actually find a project site that has a ton of existing character and existing context that we respond to through the design. So it becomes a very interesting design challenge, and we feel like it's directly translated into a lot of the design response and the success of the project that we've developed to date. I just want to start by going through kind of the iterations that we've taken of the project and how we've arrived at the current massing. So again, understanding where we are, understanding that we've got lower scale development to the west and to the north. Our original proposal was a tower that was very much along the Champaign Avenue side that was, kind of abutting the tower that's gone in at 190. That's, kind of very much kind of symmetrical and in line. And then imagining this building that would kind of step down as we went around the corner, trying to the greatest extent possible to be respectful of these separations to the north and to the west. But that got kind of thrown for a loop once our initial meeting with the city happened, and there was this desire to pursue a parkland dedication at the corner, and so that changed the massing structure, the massing strategy around where we now had to provide space in front of the building along Beech Street, which rejigged how we could get mass to work. And so we in this version had a 25-story tower that was very much centered, so rotated and centered on the project, on the lot. And then we moved past there thinking, if this parkland is really about, creating connections and links into Eve Tremblay Park, perhaps we don't need to go rectangular. Perhaps we could go with a diagonal or a skewed proportion so that it could kind of help create this almost false perspective to open things up towards the park space. And so we developed this idea, and this also allowed us to shift the tower a little bit further to the east and increase that separation. And so we actually pursued that quite a bit, ultimately to have this turned down by city staff over a preference for more kind of rectilinear and square shapes for this public space. So that kicked us back to kind of a shape that's closer to where we started from. And then just to flip forward, we get this kind of massing, which is the current condition of things. So we've got, almost like an H-shaped podium, and this is 6 stories in gray, what you can see here. And then we move up from there into the tower levels. So this dotted line here represents the footprint of the upper levels of the building. So, being mindful of our context, we have over 20 meters of separation from our property line to the edge of the tower portion of the building as we go to the west, which is double what the separation requirement is for under the tall building guidelines, and we're even greater separation here going to the south. And then as we translate to the north, we've got this entire parkland dedication, separating the tower and Beech Street and the lower rise community to the north. So we're really doing what we can to position this tower, as far from Loretta and from Beech as possible. We're also being mindful of things like the transition and change in grade that this project experiences. So the Champaign Avenue elevation is over a story lower than Loretta. We get this transition in height that happens along Beech Street. So as we go up Beech, we're climbing over 3.5 meters. And so what this means is that our parking entrance, so the access to all of the kind of covered parking, underground parking, garbage service, access to bike parking, it's effectively underground, but we don't need to go down a ramp to get there because we're at this lower level when we go through here. And then we have kind of an inner courtyard that we're providing here off of Loretta, so that all your Ubers, your visitors, your drop off and pickup, they aren't parking on the street. They aren't taking up parallel parking spaces on Loretta. They're able to come into the site. There's a number of parking spaces in here, and that's where your short-term parking can take place. And we're not creating these bottlenecks along public streets that get even worse, during the winter and even this time of year. The other thing that we're managing as well, so we mentioned change in grade, we mentioned the parkland dedication at the corner, is we're also not developing this portion of the building. So this is the 10% parkland dedication that we're providing. We're nearly doubling this kind of green space dedication in front of the building with the way that we've decided to move forward with the project. So there still is a change in grade here. So from a public approach perspective, we're seeing this being this kind of nice long processional route that allows for benches and kind of a nice landscaped element, and then an interesting curved element here for barrier-free ramp to provide access up to the main entrance. But the nice part about this as well is that we won't have building underneath the majority of this. so that we were actually able to provide sufficient soil volume to provide adequate tree planting for this area. So it won't just be shrubs that we're able to plant in here. We'll actually be able to plant some significant sized trees to really soften this edge and provide real canopies, actual shade, and really create a unique kind of pedestrian environment in this soft landscaped area in front of the building. So moving on from there, these are stats. We can go back to these if we'd like. We've done some analyses of the building in context. So this is in existing context. We all know that there's tons of planned context for this area as well. But we can see here that that green area in front of the building, the massing of the building in relation to the existing two MB towers that are here already, the abutting property to the south. But we can see that in general, while this is more height, this certainly isn't outside of the norm. This certainly isn't not in keeping with the type of development, the type of density that we've already seen in this neighborhood. And then as we move forward here, we can get into the design of the building itself. So really, we're looking at kind of a couple different personalities to the project because we're relating to the different characteristics of the street. And then we're pulling that up into the tower area of the building. So kind of our first challenge was, with the tower portion up top, the majority of views of the building is going to be in the long face of the tower level. And while we conform with the floor plate requirements for high-rise buildings, this is, a long elevation to look at. So we wanted to break this up, and the way that we've done this is through this kind of folded form veil that we have covering, about half of the tower element. So this really kind of works to break things up and complements the nature of kind of the delineation of the building that we've got at the podium levels as well. So it's kind of this way of creating a duality in the project that goes from the podium levels and climbs all the way up. Our strategy at the ground floor level is really to be mindful of the vastly different character of Champaign and Loretta. So Loretta is much more low rise in scale, a lot more kind of single family homes or duplexes, low rise kind of residential development. So our intent here is to use a lower scale masonry, so a brick masonry that refers more to the existing context that we see across the street and in the neighborhood to the north or to the west. And a lot of articulation to try to bring that scale of the podium down. So we've got these horizontal elements that are being expressed at the second floor level, and then the building steps back after the fourth floor. So we're doing a lot here to try to soften the expression of the building and create a lot of articulation here to mimic the cadence of the articulation that we see across the street in the existing buildings. So these are units that are going to have at-grade connection. Every unit has a balcony that faces out towards the street. The ground floor units all have porches that have direct street access. So doors to the street, we all understand to be a big thing in terms of pedestrian connectivity and ensuring vibrant and active streets. And so we've really taken this to heart to try to promote this integration and interaction here along Loretta. And then the building, as we mentioned here, steps back considerably before we start to go up into this tower form. Now, going around the back side of the building, this is this inner courtyard that I spoke of. So this is where we're going to get our drop off and pick up parking. This also, we have two access points for the main lobby for the building, and then we'll have residential units that'll actually face into this courtyard space as well. But what we can see from this image is the height of Loretta and then down to the lower level height of Champaign here. And so when we're parking in our first level of parking on Champaign, we're actually kind of underneath the surface parking in this courtyard that's accessed off of Loretta. Going around, so this is a view down Champaign, and now as a different approach along Champaign, instead of having all this articulation and subdivision and stepping back, the other buildings along Champaign have very little articulation. Most of them don't even have podiums. So we have a much taller expression here to reflect the taller expression of the other buildings. Again, a lot more density in general along Champaign. So this gets reflected in the way that we articulated and designed the podium levels along Champaign. Now we still have opportunity for at-grade suites, and we're working a little bit harder to create this separation and division so that residential units feel comfortable and feel private and separated from the street. And then we also have right at the corner facing or adjacent the parkland dedication is going to be a small retail shop right in the corner here. So kind of that closest adjacency to where this parkland dedication will be, is where we're going to find this retail, acting almost as like a bit of a kitty corner to Rienzo's to offer some, you know, community or sort of commercial aspect to the community in this corner. And then we can see the way that we've stepped up the building in the upper levels here. So kind of an interesting way that we've chosen to articulate the corners. So I talked about the unique architecture and the kind of the folded ribbon effect that we have going up the building. So we step the building back to create this podium, and then we actually cantilever it back on the tower levels to try to keep up with this kind of to be in plane with the podium elevation. Again, this is all about enhancing this corner and drawing attention to it as something unique, as a special feature for the project. These sections here show the studies, the analysis that we did in looking at the character of Loretta and how we can see this lower scale residential development that's in the neighborhood, and how the building has been designed to reflect this, where we have a lot of step backs and articulation. And in contrast, we look at the Champaign side, and we've got a number of buildings here that are high-rise buildings that have no podium articulation. They have no deviation whatsoever as we get down. So we've got taller articulation on the proposed development, but we still do step back for the podium levels before we do that bump out for the tower. Quickly with the floor plans, you know, so we've got ample bike storage, and this is bike storage we can even provide more of. And then a lot of resident storage as well. This is the lower parking level plan. The P1 plan, which is basically at grade for the Champaign Street side, has a few residential suites, and then we have that retail unit in the corner. But garbage is easily accessed, mechanical spaces. A lot of this is actually quite simple to get to. Garbage is going to support the commercial use as well. So this has been thought through, and this is very efficient from a vehicular traffic perspective and access standpoint. And then as we move up, we've got this visitor drop-off parking here. We've got a very interesting plan for the resident lobby with these interconnected floor spaces and sculptural stairs, you know, allowing these different levels to connect together. And then as we move up, we have a good mix of unit sizes, you know, that 2-bedroom units that are pushing 1,000 square feet, well over the 80 square foot threshold that Paul was mentioning. Large amenity spaces, this terrace in particular on level 7. And then we climb up the building with this kind of veil formed here that's non-orthogonal in comparison to the rest of the floor plate for the project. And then we move up from there. So we've done some angular plane studies to show kind of tower setbacks and how the building is oriented on the site. But I think I'll park it here, and we're happy to take questions about the project.
Okay, thank you both. So we're actually up to we've got 21 folks in attendance. So I think we're going to stick to the webinar format. So I would ask that people type in their questions in the Q&A, and we will address them that way. So we have 2 questions to start. I'll read out the first one. The question reads, why does the building have to be so high on the west side of Champaign? We thought 14 stories was the highest. Who wants to take that one, Paul or Ryan?
Sure. I can start, and then Ryan can
Okay.
jump in. So yeah, I mean, since the secondary plan was prepared and has 6 stories on this site, you know, the city's official plan has changed a fair bit in terms of density. And those changes are driven by how the city wants to grow. So the city has ratcheted up their expectations of intensification even further from what was in the previous official plan. And the provincial planning statement has been revised to speak to how those strategic growth areas, which are these hubs in Ottawa, are to be the real focus of growth. And so the policies of the official plan have changed, and we are looking at it from not only from the secondary plan and obviously wanting to understand where the secondary plan came from, but we're also looking at it from the policies of the official plan of today and what do they permit. And that's where the 25-story height came from. So this is from an analysis, again, like Ryan showed quickly there, but the angular plane, the setbacks and stepbacks, and how we can, in our opinion, achieve an appropriate transition into the neighborhood. And and achieve an appropriate scale along Champaign and along Loretta, and that's how we came to the 25-story building height as something that we deemed as appropriate.
Thank you. The next question is somewhat similar, and it reads, my question is about the secondary plan. Why did the community and city go through the months of consultation to create a new secondary plan only to have the city override the plan in favor of rezoning from a 6-story to 25-story building? Do secondary plans mean anything at all?
Yeah, so thanks for the question. And the city hasn't approved the amendments to the official plan, so that's they have not made a decision on whether 25 stories is appropriate. We've put forward that we believe it is based on the city's policies. And in terms of the secondary plan, I mean, they're documents that are written at a period of time, and planning changes quickly often. And I would say it's changed quicker in the last probably 6 or 7 years in Ottawa and in Ontario than it has probably in the previous 20 years. It's with different changes to the official plan that the city was doing, but also changes at the provincial level, which have altered how we grow and how the municipalities are expected to grow over time. So the secondary plans do mean something. They are documents that are put together, but it doesn't mean that they are the only way for a site to develop. And so we look at it, we look at the secondary plan in great detail. We look at the official plan in great detail, and then we formulate an opinion from that as to what we think is appropriate for the site, weighing not only the secondary plan, but also the official plan, also the provincial planning statement and the provincial direction on that point. So I see Councillor Leeper has his hand up as well.
Thanks. Oh my goodness, excuse me. And I just wanted to reiterate what Paul said is correct. I know I've been talking to a lot of my colleagues of late about secondary plans. We do them. They probably last about 10 years, and then they are no longer compliant with the official plan as the official plan changes. But what we don't do very well as a city is update the secondary plan to conform to the official plan. I know as the city continues to evolve and as our official plans evolve, I would like to really start de-emphasizing secondary plans unless we're willing to put the resources into updating those when the official plan changes. So what the developers will do is they take a look at the secondary plan and they do a very careful analysis of whether or not it adheres to the OP whenever the OP changes, and they certainly do look for those opportunities to say there is a mismatch. All of the plans have to roll up. The zoning has to match the official plan. Sorry, the secondary plan. The secondary plan has to match the official plan. The official plan has to match the provincial policy statement. When those higher level plans change, we don't change the smaller plans because it's very expensive and time consuming. You get a mismatch, and then that's where the developer is able to argue your higher level plans justify X. And if the city refuses, they usually have a very good case to make in front of the Ontario Land Tribunal to say there is a mismatch here. The city's own plans say that we should be allowed to do this, and the tribunal will often find in their favor. So I haven't looked closely enough at the secondary plan in this one to see whether or not it is still conforming to the official plan. The planning rationale that FOTEN has put together looks accurate. I don't have any reason to doubt that it is a fair assertion of the mismatch between the secondary plan and the official plan. All of our secondary plans will get updated over the course of the next several years. We have several of them in Kitchissippi. And as those get updated, you can certainly expect that since the official plan allows more density than the previous official plan does, that those secondary plans are going to be modified to allow greater height and density as well. But I'm not sure that secondary plans are a particularly useful approach anymore, just given my experience of their defensibility over the past several years. I'll just leave it there.
Thank you. Thanks, Jeff. Okay, I'm going to read the next question. Is the proposed tower taller than the NV towers, which are closer to the Dow's Lake Station? Brian or Paul, do you want to take that one? Or do you know?
Yeah, so the NV towers are roughly the same height. They're 81 meters and 71 meters, I believe. So the tallest one, it would be slightly taller than this one. But yeah, they're roughly the same.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Next question, and I see another similar question further down the line. Have you done any wind tunnel studies? Right now, wind is an issue on Champagne affecting tree planting.
Yes, so a wind study was submitted, pedestrian level wind assessment, we call them. So looking at the ground plane and how the building would impact the ground plane in the context. So I'm by no means an expert on wind, but you can review the reports online on DevApps and see the conclusions. But it does note that Champagne, I mean, the prevailing winds are from the west, so the greater impact is really on the Loretta side. So this potentially would provide some benefit to the Champagne side. But from that wind study, I mean, they evaluate areas based on their comfort at different times of years for sitting or standing or strolling or walking. This is how these studies work. And generally on Champagne, they're finding it comfortable for standing or strolling, which is appropriate for that area. And obviously, trees would have to be planted and species chosen that would appropriately survive those conditions. But yeah, I mean, happy to take other questions if there are any. And again, the city hasn't actually reviewed the wind study or provided comments on the wind study. They may have reviewed it, but so we'll see what those are as we get through the review process.
Okay. The next question, it's a comment, so I'll just read it and we'll note it. It says 6 stories on Loretta. It is out of proportion for the houses on the other side of the street. It's a bit cute as well because you're actually proposing to increase the grade by 1 story, then adding 6 stories to the increased grade.
So yeah, I think we just want to clarify here, maybe Ryan, on the grading specifically.
Yeah, we're not adding a story in the grade. If anything, we're taking advantage of the sloping grade to reduce the excavation requirements for parking. But we're certainly not propping up an extra story of the building. And I feel like the comment about whether or not it's appropriate on Loretta is a matter of opinion. Certainly what we're providing is 4 stories and then a step back and a lot of articulation in those first 4 stories, which we've done in a lot of mature neighborhoods and executed in a way that integrates the building well into context. So understand, like we hear the comment, we disagree.
Okay, next. The original zoning required no more than 18 meters. It was altered to 20 meters and you're asking for 78 meters. We live directly across on Loretta. What is the shade impact? Will our home be completely shaded now? And I also do see further down there is a question about, just a general question about shadow studies. So maybe you could tie those 2 together in your answers.
Yeah, so yeah, sure. So there is a shadow study again that was prepared and is online. And Loretta, just the way of shadowing, Loretta doesn't really receive much or any shadow really from this project. So there shouldn't be any significant impact for the houses on Loretta. But the full study is online.
Yeah, the bulk of the shadowing actually is going to be to the east into like if you're going to look at it that way, it would be towards of Tremblay Park. But again, the narrow profile of the building reduces the total shadow that's being cast on the park. You know, to the Loretta side, it would be early morning that we'd see shadow cast in that direction. As we get to noon, the sun is highest in the sky, so we don't forecast the neighborhood to the north being affected very much at all. So you know, we've done our shadow analysis, is not overly impactful to the neighborhood.
Thank you. The next one is, I see as more of a comment to note. It reads, the height of the tower is not acceptable. It is not a step down into the neighborhood. You are comparing it to the height of Envy, but this is kitty corner. That is kitty corner to this site. The actual flow into the neighborhood is from 14-story Dow's View.
Yeah, understood. Again, I mean, so the NV towers were built at a period in time when, you know, 25 stories was very tall for the city. 30 stories was tall at one point. Now we're up to 40 or 40 plus stories. We're seeing that obviously at Dow's Lake. So it's a contextual change. And generally the city's policies look to see the tallest buildings closest to the station. Obviously, there are taller buildings closer to the transit stations here. And like we've said, we've attempted to address the transition to the neighborhood. Despite the height of towers on abutting sites, we've looked at this site and how we can transition to the neighborhood.
Okay, the next one is traffic related. It reads, I think traffic calming on Champaign will be needed if the new park space is going to be connected at all to the existing park. It will be surrounded by apartment towers and a busy intersection. It won't get much light either. Look at the shadow study. Will this park really feel public? Investment into neglected Yves Tremblay would be preferable.
Yeah, so I can potentially maybe defer to Andrew on the traffic calming aspect of Champaign. I do understand from discussions with the neighborhood association and also with Councilor Leeper about traffic on Champaign. And I know it was closed for a long period of time during construction of other buildings. And we did have suggestions from some that maybe it should just be closed and the parks could be merged together essentially. So I mean, there's options. That obviously presents different challenges for other things, but it's something that that we will look at and the city will look at as they review the transportation impact assessment. In terms of the park space, the shadow study, yeah, I mean, it demonstrates where there will be shadows. So if we're looking at in the summertime, for instance, when the park is presumably most heavily used, shadows touch the park as of around 2 p.m. and last through the rest of the afternoon. But because of the orientation of the tower, they're relatively slender in terms of the impact. Obviously, on the shoulder seasons, that impact is a little bit different, is slightly greater, but is also later in the day. So, September, March, we'd get to the park around 3 p.m. That's Yves Tremblay Park. In terms of the proposed park, I mean, there will be shadow impacts on that park by the nature of its location. And as Ryan went through, I mean, we tried different locations for that park, but the city's preference from the Parks Department was this corner of the site. And I hear the comment about investment into Yves Tremblay Park, but that yeah, it's not necessarily part of this. I mean, that's a comment that you could make to the city planner, the development review planner who's leading the file, to potentially have an impact internally.
There is funds available in an area-specific cash into parkland account that I haven't been able to budge city staff on, and I at this point it will really be the next councillor who's going to have to tackle that. But Paul is correct in saying it's not part of this project. But I think if this project moves ahead, if it has the the parkland dedication on the west side of Champaign, with the potential to, on a special event basis, for example, close the stub of Champaign for a few hours so you can have markets that spread across the two parks. I think that makes a really compelling argument for the next councillor to be able to go and say it's time to open up some of that cash in the parkland fund, and start spending on Eve Tremblay. I know they're thinking about it, but it just hasn't gotten underway yet. Forgive my voice, I'm a little raspy.
Okay. The next question is
actually,
again.
would I be able to
Sorry.
jump
Go
in?
ahead.
I just
Yes.
wanted to maybe tease out a bit of that traffic calming comment. It's definitely something we can look at, and it's glad you raised that as a comment, and we'll see that probably from staff as well. But with some of the other comments we've received, it's not necessarily speed along Champagne. At least that's my understanding. It's not speed. It's more short-term delivery, pickup drop-offs. Maybe just a lot of people parked on the street as kind of the issue. I wouldn't mind some greater clarity on the perceived issues from the community on that regard as well, just so we can have that conversation with staff when it comes up. But if it's not necessarily a speed issue, then it wouldn't be like a speed hump traffic calming. We may have to be looking at some different things. So that's just get a greater understanding of it from your perspective would be great for me.
Okay. The next comment is very similar to what was just discussed around the shade around the park. So I feel like that one has been addressed. So I'm going to move on to a question from Richard. It reads, when you mention the lower rise development to the north, where are these buildings? Our neighborhood is almost exclusively family homes or the odd 4-story.
Yeah, so thanks for the comment. So the city defines low rises up to 4 stories. The new zoning bylaw would permit 4 stories across the entirety of that neighborhood. So that is the planned context, that there will be over time. The zoning bylaw showed several different examples of how a neighborhood might transition over time with some infill to redevelopments, with some low-rise apartments. So that is the planned function. And so when we refer to it as low rise, really low rise is anything below 4 stories, or 4 stories or below. And so that includes singles up to low rise apartments.
Thank you. Yeah, so next one is a comment going back to the park. It reads, I appreciate the parkland allocation. I hope the City of Ottawa will take this opportunity to finally revamp Eve Tremblay Park. So yes, as Jeff noted, hopefully that's something that the next term of council will address. Okay, next, mechanical equipment on Champagne from some buildings is quite loud and affects sleep. Where is the mechanical equipment going to be located in your building?
So yes, it'll be all on the roof. We try to enclose and screen our rooftop equipment to the greatest extent possible because we don't like to see it. But in so doing, it also provides an acoustic separation. There are zoning requirements as well for sound being cast off of the property. And these are all things that we're very mindful of. We have acoustical reports that get completed as a result of this. So if there's one benefit of extra height, is that these units are that much further away from you, and so the sound dissipation, while we don't expect this to be an issue, will be even lesser.
I think we may have lost Alice.
I think you've lost your moderator.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
I'm now the host. Do you want it?
No, I'll take it over here. That Q&A. Okay, so Sean says, please, any discussion of closing Champagne is unacceptable. Closing the street for the park will only divert significant traffic to Champagne onto surrounding streets like Loretta and Sherwood. Sean, that's a discussion that will that would be politically initiated and wouldn't be a part of this development proposal. Let's see. So Craig and Rachel say our neighborhood has been under massive amounts of construction for many years. How many more years will be listening to construction equipment for this project? And I saw a question a little further down, I think, when I was taking a look with respect to shovels in the ground and a time frame. Can you speak, maybe Tanya, to the expected time frame for this one?
Yeah, well, this is all depending on when we get approval. So I'm assuming based on our previous experience, getting approval, rezoning, and getting building permit, it'll be most likely 2 years from now. So
And is it your intent to build this one,
right away.
or because obviously there's a number of properties with zoning approvals throughout the ward and city that have received zoning approvals and have sat for many years. So, but your intent is to build as soon as you can, and you're confident you'll have the financing and everything in place to do that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if you do get started in 2 years, roughly 18 months, 2 years, 2.5
Mhm.
years, I'm assuming that this one would be about a 2-year build.
Probably closer to like 2 years and a half to 3 years.
Okay. And I'm sorry, how many stories are you going down on the parking?
Two.
Uh, I'll go ahead.
It's well, 2-story underground parking.
Okay.
Depending on the way, like a grade, it's a story and a half we're going down basically.
Okay. But it's got a fairly big footprint. So that's, probably what, 6, 8 months of probably blasting. Have you done your geo? Like, do you know if you're going to blast or whole ram?
We
I
have
think
not gone that far yet. However, from previous experiences, usually depending on how they usually a month and a half of excavation per floor. So if you're going 1.5, so it would be approximately, let's say, 2 to 2 months and a half of excavation.
Okay. I'm going to let a more talented moderator take over from here.
Um, my apologies. I was typing in the chat and I think I logged out, but I'm back on. I'm going to read the next question I'm seeing. It reads, back to parking. Have you accounted for the overflow of parking onto local streets? Our streets are already packed with blocked driveways and snow removal issues.
Yeah, so so the zoning bylaw doesn't require any parking for a building in this location. The new zoning bylaw wouldn't require parking for any building in any location aside from visitor parking. But we are proposing 143 here, and KTS Project One Photon. Based on our experience, we feel like that's about the right number for the number of units proposed based on what the market is requiring, and that's what council intended when they removed any minimum requirement, was to let the market dictate. Underground parking is one of the higher cost items and one of the barriers to more affordable housing because it's very expensive to go down underground and build parking spaces. So developers don't generally want to build that if they don't need to. So we're looking at 143 here as proposed, which would be 30 for visitors, which is a lot. I would say about 10, almost 9%, 8% of the building units could have visitors at the same time. But the resident parking, we feel like it's the right number for the uptake that is expected.
I'll,
The, Go
I
ahead.
was gonna add that we will like this is gonna it's always a balance on these sites, especially around transit stations where we get technical comments from staff saying to lower the parking to ensure people adopt transit. And then yeah, at meetings like this, we get comments saying add parking and we need to make sure it's provided. So um, I agree we're at a good balance, but we welcome those comments and I know it's going to be a thing we're going to have to resolve with staff as well as the approvals proceed.
Alice, I think, has only seen questions that have come since she got back on. So let me go through a few more from the list. Okay, the mechanical equipment was answered. Um, There's a comment from Alana. The image that you're showing right now shows the extent to which the tower will be a step up into the low-rise neighborhood, not a step down. So I think there's some
Yeah,
question of interpretation about what transition means and why you feel
right,
you've accomplished it here.
right. Yeah, and that's understood. So yeah, the official plan doesn't speak to you need to be shorter than the building next to you. That's not what the policies say. The policies say that for transition, you need to look at angular planes, building setbacks, building step backs. And so, like Ryan mentioned, the tower separation to the north being so significant, the tower separation from the west being so significant. Um, and while also maintaining a separation, an appropriate separation from 90 Champagne, which is built very close to the property line. All of those things have led to the placement of the tower. The height of the tower, same, like those things have factored into the height of the tower. Yes, it is taller, but understand that, the tallest buildings within 100 meters of the transit station could be 65, 70 stories. And so you start to pull out from that and you see that 25 stories on the edge where it's appropriately transitioning is not inappropriate. Where and that's I mean obviously that's our opinion. I understand that Atlanta may feel differently, but that's where the 25 is coming from. So it's not the policies don't require that you step down from the nearest high-rise building into the neighborhood. They're just looking for transition through those mechanisms that I mentioned.
Okay. Is there the possibility of including some 3-bedroom units suitable for families with children?
Yes, for sure. We've got some larger units on the podium levels that would be perfect for 3-bedroom suites, and this is what we have in mind.
Um, Okay, I think you just answered this concerning transition to the surrounding neighborhood. The proposed 25-story towers adjacent to the 2-story homes north. Is this considered acceptable transition? And I think your assertion is yes, and you've gone through that a couple of times. Obviously, the city staff will be in a position to make a recommendation to committee and council as to whether it is or not. Let's see. How many meters is the step back? And Alice, when I'm into the questions that you can see, let me know. How many meters is the step back on Loretta from the 4 stories to 6 stories? On the drawings, it looks like the step back is only a foot or 2.
From 4 to 6 is a 2-meter step back.
Okay, about 6 feet.
Yep. Well, a bit more than 6 feet.
Okay, right. Given the current housing that would be removed, and that's something obviously I want to chat with you folks as well about, is there any requirement or voluntary plan for affordable units within the new building?
So this is something that we have been talking about, and it's we'll work through it with staff. The city, there was some news about inclusionary zoning recently but that the city does not have inclusionary zoning requirements currently. They're really negotiated on sort of a case by case basis. And so this is something that, as the councillor mentions, we anticipate having future conversations about as we move forward through the process.
There's no requirement in any of the tools that we have, and we're going to probably pass an inclusionary zoning bylaw sometime in the next couple of weeks that will have a 0% inclusionary zoning, just because the province has paused or prevented cities from doing that elsewhere in Ontario. But do you anticipate, like, I don't know what the programs still are from the CMHC with financing terms that are advantageous if you put in a certain amount of average market rent or below market rent housing. I don't know if any of your financing would be dependent on those, which would result in some of the affordability.
Well, I think it's a bit premature at the moment as we're still working through the whole building and the whole concept. We have not went for a detailed financing at this stage. It's definitely something that would be explored, and KTS would want to do is have more affordable units on the market. But I can determine right now and tell you for certainty that that could be applicable for this particular site.
Okay.
Okay, Jeff, I think I'm caught up.
Yeah, I was going to go
I
with the
think-
visitor parking access.
Okay, sorry. Go ahead. I'm sorry, I'm not seeing that one.
Okay.
But-
Yeah, it's from like 744. So I love this challenge. Visitor parking access seems pretty complex for people like Uber drivers. Its covered entranceway does not welcome people to park. Seems like it would be for residents only. Are there examples of this type of visitor parking actually reducing curb demand from cars in other development? I'm open-minded that the courtyard might work for the delivery drivers, but do you have examples where it is working?
We could certainly look to find some examples for you. This doesn't this by no means seems like a revolutionary solution to the issue. So if you'd like, we can certainly dig up some examples of instances where this has been done. It's a bit of a balance because I think the idea here is we're looking for kind of a seamless integration where we don't scream, this is a place to park, because that doesn't, kind of fit well with our existing neighborhoods. So it's, I guess the challenge is about making it inviting enough for people to actually go, but not so obviously vehicular centric that it no longer becomes a comfortable environment for pedestrian travel.
I think part of that's also going to be there's 30 parking spots for visitors here. So some of that's going to be inside the building itself. So from the Champagne access. So there is going to be a differentiation on how the building is programmed, and residents would know to direct people. Like we could, for example, direct residents to park internally, where those pickup and drop off deliveries would be, surface level, as being the only parking lot that's easily accessible for those like Uber pickup and drop off. So there's some programming options there for the site as it's laid out.
Okay. A quick comment here. Traffic calming needs for Champagne. So regarding the early requests for some feedback on that, the issue is the volume of cars parking or doing drop-offs and how unfriendly it is to pedestrians. There are not even complete sidewalks on both sides of the street, not ideal for park space. Yeah, so the sidewalk, for example, there is no sidewalk in front of Tremblay Park, which is gobsmacking to me. But do you anticipate that there would be community benefits associated with this project that would be paid at what I think council determined would be a 50% discount?
I believe it would be 1%. So I could be wrong. There was a change last minute, so I could be wrong. But I mean, certainly there would be community benefits at whatever the prescribed rate was for station areas for that 18-month window. So yes.
Okay. So that would be a decision, or that's a discussion that I'll have with staff. Is one of the most immediate needs would be for the pedestrian improvements for the use of those benefits monies. So interesting stuff. Let's see. Okay, I think we've gone through that one. So a note from another resident, just a comment. I really think that given the time that this will take, the blasting that will occur, and the height of the building, our neighborhood is really being disrespected by this proposal. I would love for the developers to live here and then see what plan they come up with. We have invested time and a lot of money in our family homes in a residential area, only to be forced to deal with these decisions, and there is no recourse for us. And they're not wrong. the official plans change, where we need to drive the density goes, or where we need to put the density, that changes over time. It does mean big changes in some neighborhoods versus others. And I don't want to diminish I don't want to diminish the disruption that this building would create if it moves ahead. Obviously, all these are decisions that are driven both from the province and the city, and I can't downplay the impact that they have. At 8:04, so Alice, I don't know if we're catching up here.
Yeah. So
currently,
I see, I see the next one. It reads, currently there's no parking on Loretta Beach to Hickory. I would ask the city to keep it this way, as it won't be possible for residents on Loretta to leave their driveways in the winter if people are parking even for a drop off on the east side. So that is a comment that's noted. Next one, I'm seeing at 8:06. It seems a bit naive to think that Uber deliveries will use designated parking spots when they can simply pull up to the curb. Champagne Avenue is total chaos. Is there a way to dissuade curb usage for deliveries?
So I mean, yeah, there are ways. I think like understand where the entrance is for most of the units on these buildings. Like an entrance off of Loretta may not be the most expeditious way to get a delivery to someone. So and it could be like education and management of for the residents, you know, they can designate their pickup spot, that sort of thing. But we understand Uber is an issue. I mean, it's something that every building is dealing with. At the same time, creating huge areas of a site for Uber cars to park is not a wise use of land either. So we just need to try and balance and figure out the best solution that we can. I completely understand that you know there's a lot of Uber and a lot of whatever skip the day, all those delivery services that are happening on the street. And we're very conscious of that, and so we'll continue to work on what might be the best solution possible here.
getting the or dictating to residents the door from which they have to pick up deliveries might help mitigate some of the curbside drop-offs. So if there is a requirement in the building that you pick up deliveries from that interior main door, that could potentially work. Obviously, the folks who have direct access onto Loretta are never going to abide by that. But that's a relatively minimal number of
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, I am not on my screen. I'm not seeing any other questions. Jeff, are you seeing, or the panel, are you
Yeah.
guys seeing any that I'm not?
I'm just
really sorry. I'm sorry
No,
about
that's
this.
okay. No worries. I am just running through the list of questions. I know I skipped over a couple as being substantially similar.
There's a couple that just came in.
Oh, good.
So I think one was restating one from earlier about the rooftop units from the Clemo.
Yeah, so I understand that KTS Properties is the same developer as the Clemo. Will they ensure that the same noise issues from rooftop air conditioning units will not occur in our neighborhood? Very legitimate question.
Yep. Well, we're still working through that at the Clemo, but we, as we're still within our bylaw, but for any future project that we had following the Clemo, we will hire an acoustic consultant specifically for, all of our cooling towers. So
And if I may, one of the questions, so it's sort of a rhetorical question, but I get the point. A challenging question here. So just to be clear, the city is okay with this site being 25 stories. And I just wanted to address that one. We don't know if this city is okay with it, and we don't know if council is okay with it. What I will say is that council recognizes that neighborhoods that are in very close proximity to LRT like this one are going to change substantially. The city of Ottawa is going to grow by somewhere between 400,000 and 500,000 people over the course of the next 25 years. So that's like adding the population of Halifax to Ottawa. And the clear direction that we have from the province, who are the ones who tell cities how they're going to grow, is to grow primarily through intensification, try to avoid or grow less through going into agricultural and natural areas on the edges of the city, and to grow the most intensely near transit. So we have an official plan that contemplates areas like this hub as being areas that will have very tall buildings. That's not carte blanche. I think, as Paul said early in the webinar, there are transitions that have to be considered, etc. They're not just allowed to plunk a 60-story building here. But the next phase of this whole process is there is a city planner. I don't know who the planner is on this one, Alice. Is there a planner on this one?
Yeah, I believe it's Jack Smith.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's a planner, Jack Smith, who is going to lead the development review process. KTS has made an application with the city for a official plan amendment to amend the secondary plan and a rezoning amendment. Jack's job is going to be to analyze the planning rationale that has been provided by FOTEN, analyze all the various different technical considerations with internal teams to determine whether or not he believes that the proposal meets with the official plan. And then he will make a recommendation to committee and council who will vote on it. So the discussion at this point is between all the various different stakeholders who all have lots of different feedback for the lead planner on the file, who's going to take all of that feedback into account, pro and con, from all the different stakeholders who input, and determine whether or not he's comfortable recommending to council that this does or doesn't meet the planning policies that guide development in Ottawa. So that's where the process goes from here. The decision has not been made yet by the planner that he can recommend this for council's approval. The planning committee has not yet voted on it, and council has not yet voted on it. So there are a number of steps still to go. So when you ask, so just to be clear, the city is okay with this site being 25 stories, that's still to be determined. FOTEN has done an analysis of all the different policies and plans that guide development in Ottawa, and they have asserted to the city that, yes, it is justified. Now, city planners will take a look and see whether or not they agree.
Thank you. Thanks, Jeff. So I'm not seeing any other questions, but just before we close things, I did want to note that, as many people may know, comments are due to the file lead by April 3rd. Planning staff will still accept comments after that date, but if they are submitted after that date, my understanding is that they may not be reflected in the staff report. So if you can, I would strongly encourage you to get your comments into staff for April 3rd. And please, we'd encourage you to CC our office on any comments so that we're seeing them as well. And I do want to confirm that, yes, Jack Smith is the planner on it, and Jack's address is jack.smith@ottawa.ca, and you can also submit feedback to him through the DevApps application. There's a submit feedback button there, so you can either do it through that or write to Jack directly and CCS. So I'm going to check once more, see if there are any more questions, but I don't think there is. I'm not seeing anything.
There's a couple of comments.
Are there? Okay.
Yeah. So I asked the city to consider the cumulative impacts of loss of sunlight at Yves Tremblay, not just for this specific development. The overall loss over the last 10 years is immense. Same resident comments, there is so much space to intensify along Carling at the empty Booth Street complex, intensifying all the way into single-family neighborhoods when there are empty parking lots on Carling and Champaign is not a great rationale. I think the only thing I can say to that, Alana, is that the official plan does set out where the tall buildings are going to be allowed, and this is one of those areas, but not across to the north and not across to the west. Sean, Sean, please email us on this because I will forget this. This site used to be a Catholic church and convent. There is a plinth with an angel statue on the site that used to be in a shrine in the back of the property. Can the developer donate this statue to St. Mary's Church in the neighborhood? I'm sure that can be arranged. Okay. Everyone, thank you so much for joining us this evening. We got through a lot of questions, and if you do have anything further that you want to ask, you can either ask Jack or you can put your questions through my office as well. And if you do provide the planner with any feedback, please provide it, consider providing it to me as well. Sorry, there was something else I wanted to say. And then whether or not, I haven't decided exactly what I'm doing with this one yet, but Alice in my office, her job is to help you put your best foot forward in terms of the arguments that you're making to the city. The arguments that resonate best with the city planner are often grounded in fairly complex planning concepts and statute and policy. Alice is in my office to help you put your best foot forward in making your argument to the planner. So with that, I will thank the applicant team, KTS folks, for coming out, and the consultants, and just say thank you very much, everyone, for joining us. Have a great evening.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.